Hi guys, thank you so much for clicking on yet another episode of Accent Academy. As always, I am your accent guru Ria, and today we're going to be talking about the 50 states of the US and how to pronounce them. I moved the camera today so that you can see the United States map a little bit easier. Today we're going to be following a general rule of top to bottom, left to right. So that means we're going to be starting on the West Coast in Washington. Okay, so fun fact, the United States' capital is Washington, D.C., and it's actually not located in the state Washington, which is really weird. It's actually located over in Virginia. I have no idea why, but that is just how it is. Next up, we have Oregon. I hear this one mispronounced a little bit, but also we don't really hear about Oregon. Sorry, Oregon. I hear Oregon or Oregon or some kind of variation of that, and you're actually not going to be pronouncing this like oregano, which is a spice that you put on pizza, but you're actually going to pronounce this as Oregon, and that G-O-N turns into a G-I-N instead of polygon, which is on. If you would like me to make an episode about the sounds of O, I would totally love to do that. I just don't see a lot of questions regarding O's anywhere specific. Next up, we have California. If someone is talking about the West Coast, they're probably talking about California, which is where I live. California is very beautiful. I would definitely recommend coming here. California. So the fun thing is that the ia is something that we're familiar with. We have a lot of names and a lot of words that have ia, like even the word Kia. Though if we're going to actually pronounce it in a normal way, ia, just like my name, Ria. I hear people mispronouncing that first I a little bit. Some people say California. You're actually going to make it very soft. You're going to go that IH kind of sound, so it's going to go California. Next up, we have Nevada or Nevada. You can pronounce it either way. A lot of people in the United States pronounce it differently, and it's actually really your call. Whichever sounds more pleasing or whatever feels easier to you, you can go ahead and use that. I like to say Nevada just because I feel like it sounds more local. So I like to say Nevada. Going up, we have Idaho. I don't hear a lot about this state. Sorry, Idaho. There's no shade to you, Idaho. But I don't hear a lot about Idaho. Idaho. So, you can do with that what you will. Utah. This one actually might be a little bit tricky to pronounce, but I feel like once you hear it a couple of times, you can get the vibe of it. You've got U, literally just the letter U, ta. In California, we've got Lake Tahoe, so it's the same kind of ta sound. If you're familiar with British English, you might be able to make this sound really easily. Utah. Going down, we have Arizona. So I hear the same issue with that I hear a lot of people say Arizona, but you're gonna calm down that I. You're gonna go Arizona. Zona. Again, with that very specific O sound. We're gonna go all the way up to Montana. If you're familiar with the Disney Channel show Hannah Montana, you may actually have heard this pronunciation. Going back to our 8th episode, if you haven't seen that, you should totally check it out. It's easily one of the most important episodes of Accent Academy, but you're going to pronounce that first A as an AY, Hannah Montana, Tana. So it's a very loaded sound. Going down, we have Wyoming. Wyoming. We have the same very specific O sound, O. Just gonna say letter O, just say it. O, Y-O, Maine. Underneath that, we have Colorado. Again, I hear Colorado a little bit. Totally depends, same thing with Nevada. It totally depends how you want to pronounce it. I'm not actually familiar with how locals pronounce this state, but you can totally go with what sounds right to you. Colorado might be a little bit it might be a little bit stress heavy for you, so if you want to say Colorado, that's totally okay. Underneath that, we have New Mexico. I don't hear a lot of people mispronounce Mexico, except for maybe making that E sound a little bit too AY like. So you're going to pronounce it as Mexico. Think of that X as a E as a CKS. Also, that I is going to be just like the California I. It's going to be I instead of E. Just watch out for that. Up next, we have North and South Dakota. Dakota. If you haven't seen our episode on T and D, totally check that out because that's exactly what we're using on that T sound. Dakota. And that A sound is that U kind of sounding A. Going down, we have Nebraska. Nebraska. If you pronounce it as Nebraska, like ne, that's also okay. Just make sure you don't overemphasize that ne too much. But definitely pronounce it as bra and not bruh. Nebraska. That just, it's simply not how it's pronounced. And that last A is an Going down, we have Kansas. Kansas. Now we're entering the kind of very country, like I like to call it the country like part of the United States. So you've got really, really harsh sounding A's over here, and it's not very light, so you've got Kansas. Kansas. That A actually takes on more of an I sound here, Kansas. So look out for that. Directly underneath that, we have Oklahoma. Oklahoma. I don't hear a lot of people mispronouncing this state. Also, I don't hear a lot of people talking about this state, so you should be pretty much okay even if you don't know how to pronounce it. Oklahoma. Both of those A's take on a U sound, and that's all you really need to know. Underneath that is Texas. I hear this one mispronounced a little bit just because Texas is such a big state. I don't mean just like area-wise, I also mean population-wise. It has 3 of the biggest cities in the United States, so Texas. You want to make sure that that E is pronounced as an E, Texas, and you want to make sure that that A is pronounced as an I, so Texas, Texas. Make sure you're not pronouncing it as Texas or Texas. Going up, you're going to pronounce the next word as Minnesota. Again, if you haven't checked out that TT video, totally check it out because it's one of the most important aspects of the American accent. Minnesota, kind of like you're drinking like a thumbs up. You've got a Minnesota, tiny soda. Underneath that, we have Iowa. Iowa, I don't hear a lot of people mispronouncing, so we're just gonna go on over to that one. Missouri. This one I hear quite often. Missouri is a hard state to pronounce if you haven't heard of it. It doesn't follow, when you read it, you pronounce it as, if I were to like read it and break it up into words I know, it would be Missouri. But what you want to make sure is that SS turns into a Z and that OU turns into an Missouri, Missouri. Also, make sure that when you're saying Missouri, that your U is not too pointed. It's gonna roll directly into the R as one swift motion. Missouri, Missouri, Missouri. Up next, we have Arkansas.
So I am confusion. Why is this one Kansas, but this one is not Arkansas? America, explain! Explain! What do you mean in Arkansas? What?
I am so sorry. That's all I can say for this state. I'm so sorry. The S at the end is silent, unlike Kansas. And then you're also going to pronounce that A after the K much flowier. Arkansas. You're gonna actually go with the U sound. The reason for this is that this state was actually bought from France and it was named by France, so that's why. Underneath we have Louisiana. That's a pretty tough state to pronounce, just because it kind of defies the rule that we set for Missouri. You're actually going to pronounce the OU as an U, Lu, E, Z, and Going up to the top, we have Wisconsin. Wisconsin. Now, what you want to remember is that there's only one S, so it's going to actually sound like an S, not a Z. Wisconsin. That con is a very difficult sound to get, and that is actually in a separate video that we have created. But what you kind of want to remember as that is like how Americans pronounce the last name Khan, K-H-A-N. So it's just Con. We're going to go down to Illinois. Again, we've got a silent S, Illinois. And we're going to go down to Mississippi. Mississippi. This is a super hard state to pronounce, and I don't blame you if you don't get it on the first try. It has a lot of syllables. Mississippi. That first I is an I. That second I is an That third I is an I. And then that fourth I is an E. So, super fun. A fun little fact is that when Americans are trying to count seconds accurately, we'll say 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, so that you can count those seconds accurately instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's a little bit tricky. Now we're gonna go up to Michigan. This word is so mispronounced, but we're actually going to be pronouncing that CH as an SH. Michigan. I also want to make sure that you know that that gin is actually, that G-A-N is actually more of an I sound. Michigan. Going down, we have Indiana. This, again, you might get a little bit tricked because it has India, but it's not going to be pronounced the way we pronounce India. It's Indiana. Just imagine that there's a Y in there. Indiana. Because that yana, that A sound is very nasal heavy. So you really want to imagine that there's a Y there. If you pronounce it as Indiana, which would make sense. It makes sense. But that's not how it's pronounced. I'm so sorry. Underneath there, we have Kentucky. You're actually not going to pronounce it as Kentucky, like the Barbie doll Ken. You're going to pronounce it as Kentucky, just because that's how locals pronounce it. Underneath there, you have Tennessee. The most important thing is that that second E is actually going to be pronounced like an E, which is not how they usually say it. So it's going to be Tennessee. Underneath there, we have Alabama. Now, I'm gonna recall what I said earlier. These states are very country-like states, so a lot of the sounds are very Y heavy and they're very strong. So that A is the most important thing in Alabama. Alabama.
Bam! What?
I'm gonna go to the right over to Georgia. Georgia. Super easy. Just kind of pronounce it as Jor. You don't really need to pronounce it as that I-A sound. That I is kind of silent, so just go Georgia. Underneath there, we have Florida. Florida is again one of those sounds that have that immediate rolling of the R. You've got oh, Florida, Florida. You don't want to waste any time stopping that O because then it's going to sound choppy. That I is going to be an IH sound, which is a mistake I see often. Florida, not Florida. Going all the way up, we have Ohio. Pretty simple. O, hi, O. It's a really nice, simple state. I'm gonna go down a little bit to West Virginia. So the most important thing that you're going to do here is you're going to pronounce that IA as just a YA, West Virginia. You really don't want to waste a lot of time on that I because it's just non-existent. West Virginia. I'm going to go up again because the United States map is confusing. We have Pennsylvania. In fact, the state was named after its founder, William Penn. Pennsylvania. It's one of the 13 colonies, they're one of the first states of the United States. Pennsylvania.
I always used to think the Pennsylvania was spelt Pennsylvania.
Sorry.
Not Pennsylvania.
You're right, Tom Holland. It is spelt so weirdly, but you just want to break it down. Penn, remember it's 2 N's. Sol, Bay, like survey, Nia, like Rhea. I'm gonna go down to North Carolina. North Carolina, that I is very, very pronounced. Like lie, I told a lie. North Carolina. Same thing goes for South Carolina. Now we're gonna go all the way up to The fun thing about New York is that the EW is very misleading. You're going to pronounce it more as an NU, New York, New York. I hear a lot of people pronouncing that EU very harshly, New York. I hear it pretty often, so I think it's kind of normalized, but if you want to pronounce it the right way, it's New York. Underneath that, because we've got these itty bitty tiny little states, I'm going to zoom in, New Jersey, again, the same rule with New York. Jersey. That EY kind of is a little bit tricky when you first read it, but I'm sure you'll get the hang of it. Super easy state. New Jersey. It's just E. We have Delaware. 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 You want to make sure that you don't, again, waste too much time between that E and that L. Delaware. Just kind of let it roll off. Delaware. Delaware. Del, like a computer, and wear, like I'm putting on, like I'm wearing a shirt. Underneath there, we have Maryland. Maryland, that Y is actually going to take on a U sound, UH sound. Maryland, and that LAN is actually going to sound more like an LIN. Going all the way up, we have Vermont. You're not actually going to pronounce that T at all, or if you want to, you can pronounce it a little bit, Vermont. To the right, we have New Hampshire. That IRE is pretty tricky, but the United States are not phonetic. Again, it's English. So you're going to be pronouncing that IRE as if it's just an IR, New Hampshire. Don't pronounce it as New Hampshire. Underneath that, we have Massachusetts. Again, a little bit tricky, but what you want to remember is that it's not like Michigan. That CH is actually going to be pronounced as a CH. Massachusetts. That second A is more of a UH sound, and the U is very OO sounding. Massachusetts. Underneath there, we have Connecticut to the left. Connecticut. Again, why do they spell things like this? It's not going to be Connecticut. You're going to omit that second C. It's just going to be Connecticut, Connecticut, Connecticut. Again, that T turns into a D. To the right there, we have Rhode Island. Road, like I rode my car, or I'm going on the road. And then to the right, we have island. If you don't pronounce island right, that's totally okay. We can break it down. Island is spelled Island, but you're actually going to pronounce it as island. And then again, that L-A-N-D turns into an L-I-N-D. That doesn't happen all the time. If you're talking about one of my favorite movies, La La Land, you're going to pronounce it differently. Normally, if land is in a word, it's going to be pronounced as lind. Going up, we have Maine. Maine. Super easy, in my opinion. Maine. That A-I sound is pretty common, and it just sounds like the word Maine without the E. So the two are homonyms. I just wanna drop in something because I can't drop it into anything else. Above the United States, we have Canada, like a can of soup, ada. If you are unfamiliar with that can sound, you can totally go and check out that A. Totally would recommend it. Canada. I hear a lot of people say Kannada, which is a language that we speak in India, in South India, to be more precise, but you're actually going to be pronouncing this a little bit different. Underneath the United States, we have Mexico. Mexico. We already discussed this in New Mexico, so you should be good to go. Thank you so much for clicking on this episode of Accent Academy. As always, I am your accent guru, Ria, and because this video was a little bit long, you can totally check out the timestamps in the description. You can click to different parts of the video, different states that you'd like pronunciations for. If there's any state that you mispronounce and you can't really figure out why, or it just sounds weird, you can totally let me know down in the comments. You can use check out the description below, because I will be giving a little voice memo site that you can attach your recording to, and I can totally give it a listen and help you out with that. So thank you so much for clicking on this episode, and I'll see you next week.